UK, bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Let's get you up to date with the headlines. Frighten the pants off everyone. That was Matt Hancock's plan to ensure public compliance with constantly changing COVID rules during the pandemic. Leaked WhatsApp messages in the Sunday Telegraph show how the former health secretary and his aides discussed how to utilise fear over a new strain of the virus to make people obey lockdowns. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told us Mr Hancock's political career is over.
I think the key thing is that he accounts for himself in front of an inquiry. It comes back to this point, doesn't it? Why we need this inquiry to take place quickly. A lot of people lost their lives. There's a lot of people who think that the way in which lockdowns operated has had long-term implications on all kinds of fronts. Everybody wants an inquiry because everybody wants to be able to see the evidence, to be able to debate it properly and calmly, and it's why we need to get on with it.
Well, in a separate set of leaked messages, Boris Johnson was described as a nationally distrusted figure by the UK's top civil servant, who feared the then Prime Minister would be ignored by the public if he introduced new lockdown rules. Simon Case was appointed Cabinet Secretary by Mr Johnson in September 2020. Both the Cabinet Office and Mr Johnson declined to comment on the leaks. Thousands of asylum seekers will be left permanently in limbo as a result of proposed legislation which is set to be announced this week. That's the warning from the Refugee Council, which says government plans could effectively shatter the UK's commitments under the UN Refugee Convention to give people a fair hearing regardless of their route to this country. The new legislation would render as inadmissible asylum claims from those who travel to the UK on small boats. The charity believes the new plans are both unworkable and costly. Next week's remaining ambulance strikes in England have been called off. The Unite union, which represents 3,000 workers, has entered pay talks with the government and joins Unison and GMB in doing so. GMB said on Friday there'd been a huge shift in the government's position. The strikes were due to take place tomorrow and Wednesday. 2 men arrested following the shooting of a police officer in Northern Ireland have been released. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot several times in Omagh last month, and he remains in a critical but stable condition in hospital. 6 other men who were arrested and questioned as part of the investigation have been released previously. And Liverpool broke Manchester United hearts and a host of records with an historic 7-0 win against their arch-rivals at Anfield. Mo Salah scored twice to become Liverpool's record Premier League goal scorer. It's Liverpool's greatest ever win against Manchester United, and it's United's heaviest defeat against any team since 1931. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's time for headliners.
Hello, I'm Leo Kearson. Welcome to Headliners, your first look at Monday's top news stories. Joining me tonight are two genuinely fantastic comedians. Josh Howie, who's got his own BBC sitcom, and the face of hit podcast Trigonometry, Francis Foster, who's been on Joe Rogan. Gentlemen, great to have you here. Have you had a good weekend?
Well, that's the nicest intro I've had in a year.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. It's positive.
It's a strategy we're trying. We think instead of berating you, we're going to see if praising you brings out better performance.
I like it. I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
Yeah, last time I was on here, someone insinuated I was a paedophile, so this makes a nice gear change, mate.
I would just like to say he is.
Right, that's the first lawsuit tonight. Anyway, let's have a look at Monday's front pages. The Daily Mail has boat migrants to get life ban. That's Rishi's attempt to solve the problem with small boats coming across the English Channel. The Guardian also leads on the same story with small boats clampdown unworkable, Sunak told. So surprise, surprise, the Guardian think it's not going to work. The Telegraph says the lockdown files Hancock rejected plan to cut isolation. I, for one, am deeply shocked that the government rejected a plan to be less draconian than their lockdown rules. The Times has migrants on small boats to be barred from Britain. The Eye has Budget 2023. Hunt and Sunak head for new tax clash with Tory bank benches. I'm guessing we're not getting any tax cuts. The Daily Star says the big threes, minus 15 degrees, Scandi shiver. And those were your front pages. Let's kick things off with the front page of Monday's Daily Mail, Josh.
Well, we have the thing that everyone's really important about. Let's forget immigration for a second. Have Harry and Meghan been invited? Yes, they have, to the coronation. We don't know if they're going to go. And they said that if they do go, yeah, you can sleep in your old Frogmore, whatever. So that's the important one. We got it out of the way, right?
I don't care about that. Tell us about the immigration. This is GB News.
You want to hear about that?
Yeah, I want to know about the boats. I want to know about Rishi's plans.
You want to clip this up?
Finally, we've had a problem with years with small boats crossing the channel. It's incredibly dangerous for migrants crossing the channel. And it's also, I care about them. I also care about some of our underprivileged communities being just having migrants dumped on them in hotels and travel lodges. I'm worried about the cost of travel lodges going up at the weekend when I'm gigging. So, I mean,
all the important stuff here.
It does affect me.
Boat migrants to get life ban. Essentially, this new bill that the government are putting forward, it's unlikely that it's actually going to go through, but we'll see. And they're saying one of the things that's going to deter people is from coming over is if you do come over illegally, by these illegal means, you will get a life ban from the UK. At the moment, I think it's 2 years and 4 years. But now they're saying that... And the idea is to put off certainly the Albanian population who could come over, arguably with work permits, from doing this in an illegal manner.
Yes, they could legitimately come over instead of sort of sneaking in on something that floats. I mean, Francis, do you think this will? Josh seems to think it's not going to get passed. It's going to be picked apart in Parliament, and we won't actually get the results. I mean, it's certainly a tactic that worked in Australia. They have a rule that if you come into Australia illegally, you forfeit all right to ever live in Australia and become an Australian citizen. I mean, do you think Rishi can get this?
Well, the most difficult thing that Rishi has at the moment is the Tory party is in crisis. They're at each other's throats, and as a result of that, there's plenty of former ministers who've come out and have openly criticised the bill. In fact, that is what The Guardian has led on. The main story in The Guardian is people within the Tory party, former ministers, but also current MPs as well, coming out and saying that the plan is ultimately unworkable. And what one former minister said, according to The Guardian, who knows if it's true or not, is that the Tories' plan is to put this bill through. It then fails at the first, second or third hurdle, and then they go, look, we did our best, but unfortunately France, the EU, scuppered it. What are we going to do with these lefties? It's not our fault, it's their fault.
Well, so they can use it to build opprobrium against France, against the EU, and use it to...
And against Labour.
To cover themselves.
Well,
and to say, to blame it on, dump the blame on human rights lawyers and Labour.
As this person says, it's not like Sunak has miraculously come up with some plan that no one thought of. It's not like they couldn't have put this through under Johnson if it was passable or feasible. And we also have to remember, I know, yes, there are absolutely Albanians gaming the system, but half of these people...
Not just Albanians.
OK, no, but half of these people who are coming over are from Afghanistan, Iran. We're seeing the things, Syria. These are genuine, actual asylum seekers.
These are genuine countries with genuinely appalling their attitudes to women. Some of these cultural mores and traditions that are coming over with them. I'm not sure there's a place for them.
No, but what about a woman who is seeking asylum from Iran?
Man, look at the pictures. Look at the pictures of the boats coming across.
I'm just saying,
try and spot a woman. Try and spot a woman and a child.
Okay,
I've noticed that with Ukraine, it's women and children.
But what is a woman?
Across.
Okay, yeah, and also I'll say what are the actual routes for legal migration or seeking legal asylum? I.e., at the moment, it's Afghanistan is the only route, Hong Kong and Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right? Afghanistan, I think they let through 5 people or something.
Oh, come on. Last year, over 1 million visas were issued to immigrants and to people seeking refuge.
Not to Afghanistan. No, that's once they come over. I'm talking about the legal routes for seeking asylum. If you're in Afghanistan right now and you have helped the UK government when we were over there, and now you want to come over here because your life is being threatened and your family's being threatened, the only legal route, 5 people have been let through last year.
I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm pretty sure we allowed a lot.
There's a tiny office.
I don't know where you are. I mean, I can't interrogate the data right now. It sounds.
Yeah.
It sounds.
No, I'm not
nonsense.
saying about people who come over here via these other
illegal
routes.
We've allowed a lot more. You're right. We do need more valid immigration channels where people can apply for asylum from their own country. I mean, at the moment, it just seems to be a free for all, and anybody who can get here can then game the system to stay here, and that's not a good system.
No, I quite agree. And the problem is that we've had successive Home Office ministers who, quite frankly, are not up to the job.
Yeah.
Priti Patel talked a good game, but ultimately achieved nothing. And Suella Braverman can't even talk a good game. So the result is we have ministers who are not fit for purpose, which is why the chaos continues.
Yeah. Well, moving on to lighter news, we've got The Guardian now with Donald Trump looking like he's going to make a comeback, Francis.
He is. He delivered a speech at CPAC, which went down, according to The Guardian, brilliantly. Well, they didn't say it was brilliantly, but they said it was received rapturously. Yeah. He brought out all the old classics. We're going to, for our 7 years, you and I have been engaged in an epic struggle to rescue our country
Ethnic struggle.
Well, yeah, that's ethnic struggle. That's what The Guardian. They said epic.
They can be the same thing.
Yeah, and then we're going to finish what we started. We started something that was a miracle. We're going to complete the mission. We're going to see this battle through to ultimate victory. We're going to make America great again. Cue everybody standing up, giving him a standing ovation. He's going to run again. But also the interesting thing is DeSantis wasn't present at CPAC.
Right. Really?
No, he wasn't. He was actually meeting investors for his presidential campaign.
Wow.
So what we're going to see is Trump versus DeSantis, and Nikki Haley's going to be there, but she's got about 3%. No one really cares about her because she's a woman,
whereas
so
Trump
we can just move her to the side.
Close.
Yeah, so it's going to be Trump versus DeSantis, and we're going to see what happens.
Josh, I mean, what do you make of this?
I'm just shocked at how terrible that impression was. I'm bad at impressions. That's the worst Trump impression I've ever heard.
What? That's a great impression.
What are you talking about? That was ridiculous.
You only need one word. You just need China.
China.
Anyway, getting back to the actual news. What about the front page of the Telegraph, Josh?
Yeah, so this is Hancock rejected plan to cut isolation. They're sort of drip feeding us these messages as they're coming out. And this is as shocking as the other stuff. And it's really frustrating because online, at least anyway, it seems like the story has sort of moved a little bit to the woman who released the messages and betrayed. It's like play the ball. Yeah. And this is the ball, and this is important because there were people there. Remember a couple of years ago, everyone was getting the little pings. If you'd been near anybody that had got COVID, then that's it. You were locked away for 2 weeks, right? And now they're saying that actually, and the whole time, all these people, follow the science, follow the science. Well, the science said that if you got tested at home for those 5 days and you were clear, then you were fine. You didn't have to spend the full 2 weeks. But they didn't because as he says here, that they were worried about getting it wrong or showing people that they'd got it wrong. It was political, and the more of these messages that come out and you see how they I mean, they just laughed at the country. It's disgusting, and I'm sick of the background stuff. Let's focus on this stuff here to find out how we were all gamed and played.
Francis, Josh seems to be surprised that the government was incompetent and lied more to cover up its lies.
Do you know what? It's every day I think that I can't hate Matt Hancock anymore, but then it just goes down to another level. This quite simply shows the contempt, the absolute contempt the government had for the British public. Yeah. And we did an interview on my show with David Davis, and he put the chances of the Tories winning at 20%, the general election. I think it's minus 20 after this. I can't imagine any person that would want to vote for the Conservatives.
People are still clinging to their narrative.
Yeah.
People out there are still... And you're still
people with face masks walking around.
Totally, but I'm not talking there are people defending this or using these tweets to go, somehow it proves their point. Yeah. Like that lockdowns were good or whatever. In fact, we're going to see a story in a bit where the Metro, out of all of the messages that have been uncovered, that they've sort of gone with this one particular angle. Before also we get to that, I just want to say that Francis stole my pen, so I'm just going to take it back because
it's a nice pen.
It's a really nice pen, and I don't. Thank you very much. I saw what you did there. Put it back on my side.
But yeah. I mean, I've got absolute contempt for the British people as well, because the lockdown rules were ridiculous and shouldn't have been followed. And I'd be surprised. Was anybody following them?
No, but here's the thing, Leo. They used Project Fear, whereby they put the absolute fear of God into people. Do you remember killing Granny? God? All of that, the nudge unit. Was
that supposed to make us fearful? That made me want to spread COVID.
Well, that's because you're a complete sociopath, mate. But for the average person who feels... Look at Leo. He's just looking, going, yeah, I actually am, right? But for the average...
Disappointed she's still alive.
Yeah, but for the average person, it was completely terrifying. And as a result, something needs to be done. With the current inquiry that they're doing, if heads don't roll for this, then, quite frankly, what's the point?
Well, it's not a good inquiry.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and also next time, if the government brings out rules that are obviously ridiculous, don't follow them. Anyway, Francis, finally, what have our friends at the Daily Star got in the front cover?
Well, they've gone topical, mate, and they've used the big threes. Terrible pun. Even you in your heyday wouldn't have used that one, would you? But 3 snowstorms have hit this week, and apparently it's going to be minus 15 degrees centigrade, which for Scotland is a lovely summer.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take my jacket off, I think. Anyway, that's it for part 1. Join us in part 2 as we discuss the Stone of Destiny, why Sadiq Khan should pay as you go away with his new scheme, and why people aren't a fan of Rishi Sunak eating out to help out. See you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, nah, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Leo Kearse. I have the wonderful Josh Howie and Francis Foster joining me. Let's get back into it. The Mail now, and last week a schoolboy in Yorkshire received death threats after scuffing a Koran. Police leapt into action, but instead of arresting the people making the death threats, they charged the boy with a non-crime hate incident for mildly damaging a book, thus demonstrating that they are now enforcing Islamic blasphemy laws rather than UK actual laws. This is a bit of a worrying development, Josh.
Well, you've just done the whole story.
Yeah.
But let's read the headline. 14-year-old autistic boy's naive prank, a scuffed copy of the Quran, his mother's pitiful public apology, and a story that speaks volumes about modern policing. Well, absolutely, as you said, he bought the Bible, at home. His mates took the mickey out of him, and they dared him because of some online game thing that they buy the Quran. So he ordered it on Amazon. It came into school. He handed it to his friends. His friends then were playing with it later. He wasn't even there, and it dropped on the floor. And then suddenly reports go out that it was being burnt and stood on and all this other stuff, which were lies. A Labour councillor even tweeted that it was desecrated, the Quran. Wow. This kicked off the whole thing. They interviewed, the school brings in and interviews 30 of these kids and uses CCTV footage to find out what's going on. And all the while, the local mosque, I believe, gets involved as well. Then there was this disgusting meeting, the sort of public meeting, which was called, which was supposedly to sort of talking about how, like, we're not going to, I don't know if it was the imam, but basically saying that we're not going to allow this to go any further, like he was the good guy somehow. Yeah. And these death threats, and by the way, the boy had got death threats. The mother was there in a headscarf, begging essentially for her son's life. Yeah. It seemed like,
real hostage.
And the police and the headmaster sitting next to there and nodding along to this imam, like, oh yeah, it was terrible. And as you say, death threats went out.
Yeah.
How is that not being investigated? And now the kid's in hiding. He's terrified for his life. They've had arson threats. I mean, we do not live in a theocracy. Yeah. We do not have blasphemy laws. Well, it doesn't even matter that the kid's autistic.
We kind of do now, Josh.
Well, this is
the thing.
This is it. Our institutions have failed. Like, it's all well and good that we could say, well, we don't have blasphemy laws, and these are our values of the liberal democracy that we live in. If those aren't then protected by our institutions, i.e., the police receiving death threats for a 14-year-old boy, then that is when the system is threatened.
Yeah.
And we have to stand up with our democracy, with our vote, to protect the system that we have, which is a great system.
Yeah.
Well, I've just got to say that I find this all incredibly Islamophobic, so...
This is the thing, though, friends. I mean, the fear of looking racist, the fear of looking Islamophobic has caused so much damage. We've had the grooming gangs being ignored by the authorities because they were afraid of looking racist if they dealt with them. We had the security guard at the Manchester Arena who didn't apprehend the Ariana Grande bomber because he was afraid of looking racist if he apprehended a man with a rucksack sweating and fidgeting at a concert for Ariana Grande fans. And now we've got this. We've got the police being so afraid of looking racist or Islamophobic if they actually deal with the death threats and deal with the actual crime that's happened, and instead charging the boy with a non-crime hate incident, which is going to stay on his record for, I think it's the rest of his life.
Well, look, if we're going to have an honest conversation, let's have an honest conversation. It's not just that. It's not just that. It's the fact that people are fearing for their life. Take the murder of Sir David Ames.
Yeah.
He was murdered last year. He was brutally murdered by an Islamic fundamentalist, an extremist, and everyone came on the next day to talk about it in Parliament. What did they talk about? Online hate. It had nothing to do with online hate. He was a religious extremist. But because people are terrified and fearful for their own lives, that if they in some way criticise the Islamic religion, the extremists are going to then make threats and their lives are going to be put in danger.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to speak honestly or frankly about this situation, and they're going to kowtow to these people time and time again, which is what is happening.
Terrifying. And actually, I would just like to take everything I said back.
Anyway, next is The Telegraph, and it's another snub for the coronation of King Charles, this time from Scotland, as a candidate to replace Nicola Sturgeon reveals her hardline independent streak by refusing to release the Stone of Scone. Sounds like something Alex Salmon would have for Levenses, Francis.
Yes, indeed. So the SNP candidate backs Alex Salmon over refusal of Stone of Destiny. Sounds like something out of Harry Potter, mate, for King's coronation. So, and this is all about, there's a special stone, that the Stone of Destiny, which has always been used in coronations, and it's based in Scotland, but they bring it down for all the coronations.
Even the chickens.
Even the chickens, exactly. Great pun. But
so we've got a picture of it here. If you're on listening on DAB and you can't see it, it looks like a big stone.
Yeah.
I mean, I could probably get you one from the tip if you're desperate for a stone.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the Stone of Destiny. But anyway, Alex Salmon says that he's not going to let King Charles have the Stone of Destiny if he doesn't give them another independence referendum, which is just the most insane thing.
Yeah, I mean,
how many referendums do you people want? How many do you want?
I didn't want any, but we had one. I thought that'd be enough. But I mean, George, the SNP are supposed to represent the whole of Scotland. They don't seem to be doing a good job of representing unionists who might want Scotland to be represented at the
absolutely.
coronation.
The argument goes that by bringing the stone down, it shows how integral Scotland is to the UK, and it's a sign of respect. But what's also interesting is at the moment it's at the Edinburgh Castle. Next year it's going to move to Perthshire, where they built a £10 million museum with what? UK government funding!
That's how everything in Scotland gets built, Josh. Get used to it. The Metro now, and another far-right conspiracy theory comes true as Rishi's Eat Out to Help Out mainly helped out COVID to spread. But this was covered up. Josh, tell us more.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak's Eat Out to help out spread COVID, but was covered up. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier in the show, where certain newspapers, the Metro, which is a particularly sort of right-on newspaper, is focusing on things like this. I think it's important to focus on it, but I don't think it's the most important story of what's coming out, certainly even in the last 24 hours. So they've chosen this because it makes everybody look bad.
Right, not just Matt Hancock.
And certainly not themselves, who are also pushing the sort of ideology of the time.
Yeah.
So this stuff, they're basically saying, and actually this is classic COVID reporting, because they're saying that there was science to prove that said it went up. It might have contributed between 8 and 17% of new COVID infections. What they haven't said there is how many deaths, is that new COVID infections amongst the young who weren't protecting themselves that much? Because by then, it was pretty much everyone knew that it was really the elderly who really needed the protection of people with underlying conditions. I'm imagining that a lot of people in their 80s weren't going, oh, I'm going to get 50% off and risk my life by going out for
queue up in a pizzeria.
Imagine this is mostly amongst young people. And then people will say, oh, well, then the younger people passed it on to the old and whatever. But this is really, that time was about everything reopening and to encourage people to get out there. And of course, things were going to go. It also doesn't say what that 8% of what? This is in the middle of summer when everything was at its lowest coming down anyway. So it would have gone up, arguably, just by people emerging into the light after that time. So
I guess we're never going to know the real picture, Francis.
No, and also as well, it doesn't touch on the fact that This particular scheme, how many businesses did it save? Because if you think about what happened during the lockdown, the vast majority of these businesses would have been shuttered. Many of them went bust. This was a very necessary thing, in my opinion, to keep these types of businesses open.
I don't know. I think it was wasting money that we didn't have to waste. Just handing tax, but borrowing.
I got a half-price pizza, mate. I'm on board.
Half-price pizza that we pay for in a mortgage until the end of our lives. Anyway, ending this section with Monday's Daily Mail, and Sadiq Khan's mismanagement has left London in debt, so he's going to tap up drivers for even more money with another complicated, expensive to administer zone. Francis.
Indeed, Sadiq Khan considers pay-as-you-drive scheme using ULEZ cameras. London Mayor asked TfL to look into developing plans to use more sophisticated technology to charge road users. And he has seen Singapore and the way Singapore fleeces its citizens, and he thinks, you know what, I want that in London. Let's get some Singapore-style toll roads using sophisticated technology, basically something that's going to infringe our human rights. And when people pressured him about this was Sadiq Khan's words. Some of you have got good reasons to oppose you, Les. I think we can all think that's fair. But you're in coalition with COVID deniers.
All right, so you're linked to these people that we see as bad.
It gets even better. You may not like it. You're in coalition with the far right. And you're in coalition with vaccine deniers as well. So the holy trinity of hated people. The moment you question Sadiq Khan, he might as well just say paedophile as well. He might just as well do the whole of them.
Josh, you think Sadiq Khan is ever going to use the term far right in an appropriate way?
What, with actually
refer to maybe
racist
the Nazis as far right instead of just anybody who challenges
Well, no,
them.
of course, it's like all meaning of the word gets lost, just like with transphobe or whatever. Like just because you say that there are two biological sexes, that makes you a transphobe. But this story is actually about pushing things further, not just beyond ULEZ, in terms of any time you use the car that you would be essentially taxed, school runs and whatnot. And even Labour are balking a little bit at this idea. And you know what? He'll get voted out. And it's just like what happened in Chicago. You have a massively democratic city. They just voted out their mayor by like 55%. Like, for pushing through this kind of insanity. At some point, people would just go, no, mate, enough's enough.
And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the emissions zone makes sense in the centre of London where there's high emissions and bad air quality. In the outer zones of London, there isn't bad air quality. It's pretty good air quality. And also, we're all moving to electric cars, so there's not going to be an issue with vehicle emissions anyway. Anyway, that's part 2 in the bag. But coming up, we've got rules about Swissness in the world of chocolate, the rise in shoplifting, and everyone's favourite question, what is a woman? See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
rumors. Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. The Guardian reports on Toblerone's mountain design changing as the production of the bar moves out of Switzerland. I'm not sure where it's moving to, but I'm guessing somewhere weird, as it's only sold in weird places like pound shops and airport duty-free. Francis, tell us more.
Well, this is a big story, Leo. This is one of the biggest stories of the night. Matterhorn no more. Toblerone told to change design under Swissness rules. So what's happened is they have taken some of the production has left Switzerland, and as a result of it, they can't say they're made in Switzerland anymore because 80% of the raw ingredients must be sourced from that country, and the majority of processing taken as well. So what has happened is they've had to give it a slight rebrand. And as a result, it's no longer made in Switzerland. I will no longer be eating Toblerone. Will you be standing with me, Leo?
Well, I don't eat it anyway. It's too sweet. Josh, will you be?
I didn't eat it, but I am interested to find out that prices for things that were made in Switzerland are about 20% higher.
Really?
Just for the Swiss names. So I don't know if they're going to put the price down or not. Also, the reason why it's called Toblerone is the creator was Theodore Tobler, and it's Tyrone is a toasted almond, so it's Toblerone.
Right.
You can see why I missed that bit out, mate.
Portmanteau.
Portmanteau, yeah.
Portman 3.
Anyway, which is a French word, ironically. Anyway, the Times now, and crime is surging in Britain as police are too busy dancing at pride parades to arrest anyone. And self-checkouts make it very easy to give ourselves a 5-finger discount. Josh, I've got to say that whatever shop sold you that jacket robbed you.
Ouch. Did you have to say that?
No.
OK, well...
It's nice to have an all-weather jacket. Somebody died in that jacket, didn't they, John?
This was actually quite an expensive jacket, to be honest.
It's quite expensive for you, like $4.99.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, moving on. Shoplift Britain, why thieves, I can't say thieves properly, why thieves feel free to clear our shelves. It's for a few different reasons, actually. Yes, part of it is, as you say, because of these self-checkout things, although they're getting a little bit more sophisticated now. Like people, now I've got a friend called, I won't say his real name, but let's call him Bill, who is like, he is just like coming into the pub with like all of these crazy tales of stuff that he's thieving from like Waitrose and whatever, and like how you put through something that's like a similar size, or he's got all these different tactics.
Or you can weigh steak as onions.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Now they're saying that if someone puts through 5 bags of carrots, then they're going to go, wait a minute, this is a little bit dodgy, and then send over the person to check it out. So they're getting a bit more sophisticated, and also checking out the shape of things and whatnot. But it seems like people have been getting away with it for a while. The question, I guess, with these companies, as these supermarkets, are they still making more money by not hiring the people necessary to do it in the traditional way? The other thing that's going on top of that, is that a few years ago they changed the law where anything that was stolen less than £200 in value went to a magistrate's court, so it was basically had less of a sentence. Because of that, that sort of was to sort of keep the courts moving a bit smoother. But what that's happened now is that actually a lot more people are committing those crimes, thinking they're going to get away with it. And we're seeing, of course, anybody who's online sees those videos in America, which are insane, where people are just going into these shops, just grabbing everything
Filling
they can.
rucksacks.
Just sort of walking out, and you just see the staff standing there because they don't want to get involved. I guess in America you've also got guns, but over here you have the security have been told now not to interfere. They would rather not have the bad publicity that might come from someone being accidentally hurt whilst being arrested or whatnot than the loss of the product itself.
And in fact, on GB News yesterday, there was a shopkeeper who's interviewed who the police told him he detained a shoplifter, and the police told him to let the shoplifter go or they'd arrest the shopkeeper.
Well, I think this is very progressive. And by the way, I don't know who Bill is, but if anybody wants some nice steaks, Francis J. Foster on Twitter.
They'll have onion labels on them. Anyway, the Metro now, and after nearly 50 years in jail and 9 sieges, one of Britain's most violent prisoners, Charles Bronson, wants to get out of the prison he's in. I'm amazed he hasn't just identified as a woman, Francis.
Well, this is it. Charlie Bronson, he eyes up freedom after nearly 50 years at parole hearing tomorrow. Dubbed one of Britain's most violent offenders, Bronson, and this is brilliant, he changed his name to Salvador in 2014 after the artist Salvador Dali. And he's been in prison for 50 years. He was first sent to jail, Leo, in 1968 and has held 11 hostages in 9 different sieges with victims, including governors.
Is he sponsored by Colonel Gaddafi?
Yeah, exactly. Doctors, staff. And on one occasion, the absolute nutbar, his own solicitor. You've got to be a special kind of nutcase to basically take hostage your own solicitor. And Charlie, if you're watching this, these are jokes, mate. Chill out. And if you do get out, please don't come and find me.
Don't worry, he's got to be about 75 now.
Mate, he could still have me.
I found this to be a really confusing story because if he's been in jail for 50 years, when did he make the Death Wish movies?
Actually, the name Charles Bronson, he wasn't originally christened Charles Bronson. But he started a career as a bare-knuckle boxer.
Yeah,
so,
that's how I started.
So the promoter said, yeah, that's how he ended up with that face. The promoter said, change your name to Charles Bronson because it's a tough name and people will fear you. And he kept it.
What he says, I've never harmed a woman, never harmed a child. If you have to say that as your defence, that's not a good look. Hey, mate, I've never harmed a child.
Still leaves quite a lot of people you could have harmed.
However, a career in the Catholic Church is not going to be for him. Anyway.
Anyway, the Times now, and Kanye West was cancelled for saying he'd go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. But the only death has been his career and Adidas's profit margins. Josh, you've got this.
Adidas takes the $1 billion rap, I guess there's a pun there, for Kanye West. So they have about $500 million or euros in stock left unsold. Weirdly enough, the stuff that's online that is available, like private sellers, is actually selling at a premium.
Right.
And they've had a pretty terrible few years, and it's not just because of Kanye, even though I don't think they appreciated how much of their stock was tied into that, how much they were selling because of him. But also in China, to be fair, they actually stood up in China and said, no, we're not going to use any more of this cotton that was sourced basically by slave labour, the Uyghurs, the genocide that's going on there. Fair enough for them standing up for that. But then China turned around and said, well, we're going to boycott you. So they're having real problems with China over there.
So they can't sell their
They can't sell their goods in China either. And so, yeah, they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. And it's causing, obviously, a real problem for them. They have got in a new CEO. Supposedly he managed to turn things around at the last company he was in.
Yeah, he was at Puma before.
Yeah, so and he increased it 9-fold or whatever. The other thing that's interesting that I hadn't appreciated, because I sort of don't want to get into the whole anti-Semitism element of it, is how much they actually sort of spread themselves too thin across the market, whereas Nike could sell like way more, but it's all about to maintain coolness, you've got to be exclusive.
Right.
That's why I only appear on GB News.
And I guess the danger, Francis, with having a cool star flogging your stuff, as they had with Kanye West, he was cool at one point.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, if that person has some sort of mental breakdown or reveals some sort of racist, anti-Semitic tendencies, then it destroys the business you've got with them.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, Kanye has always been, dare I say it, quite a troubled individual. And he's always come out with pretty weird statements. It's just no one really predicted for him to go on into InfoWars, put a sock on his head and say the words, "I love Hitler." Yeah. So, I mean, and that is pretty much self-cancellation territory, really.
By the way,
there's no coming back from that.
A lesson for us all there.
Yeah, I think so.
And well done, by the way, to the Times for saying that he posted a slew of anti-Semitic remarks, as opposed to some cowards in some of the newspapers who go allegedly anti-Semitic. I think if you're going DEFCON 3 on Jews, that's pretty anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Anyway, the Daily Mail now, and what is a woman? Well, lesbians aren't women, apparently, as they're being banned from female-only spaces because they've been speaking out against men who identify as women getting access to these spaces. Francis, I am very confused.
Yeah, so, right, exactly. So, gay women are said to be meeting in secret to stop their events being invaded by men who are attracted to females and claiming to be lesbians. So, lesbian groups have been banned from female-only spaces in bid to include men who identify as women. And this has actually been going on for a long time. I actually remember talking to a friend of mine around about 7-8 years ago who is a gay woman and saying that this has been happening for a long time, which is why with the whole trans debate, it's really the feminists who are at the forefront of this because they were the ones who were seeing female-only spaces being obliterated, and it's young gay women in particular in their teens and autistic girls who are the ones who are then being pushed to transition.
So they're being, because I mean the sort of trans ideology says that if somebody displays characteristics that are traditionally associated with the opposite gender, so if you're a young woman but you display masculine tendencies, then they look at putting that person on a pathway to transitioning. But obviously, a lot of gay women display masculine stereotypes, and a lot of gay men. They do. I mean, it's like we're not gonna debate that. Like it's just some
what sort of characteristics?
Don't make me flap my wrist. This is
the ability to stick to a budget.
But what's happening here in this story is, and it's part of what you've seen, where these lesbians, these women, are being told that they're actually bigots because they won't sleep with someone who identifies as a woman, but they actually have a penis. And that's the insane thing that's going on. You've also had like dating apps with lesbians, and you see these pictures of lesbians on the dating app, and it's me. Basically. Oh, my name's Mary, and I'm a woman, and whatever, and they got a beard.
I've got you more as a Lucinda, mate.
That's not my alter ego, no, Mary. That's Mother of Jesus. But also, you've got a woman in Australia who's been sued because this app that she created. She's the guy. It's a guy. She's been sued by a guy. This guy says he's a woman. He's a guy, and he's suing her for basically not being allowed onto this single-sex web app. And you also got this, like, the cotton ceiling, which you have, again, like these men essentially saying, running classes on how to sleep with lesbians and whatnot. But you know where we don't see any confusion about real lesbians or not?
Pornography.
I was going to say that, and then I thought he's not going to go there. He's going to make some...
He went there.
You went there, my friend.
Funnily enough, on Twitter the other day, I saw a trans woman getting angry at a real woman who was using a prosthetic penis to film transgender porn, and the trans woman was saying, "You will never be. You're a real woman. You'll never be a trans woman. There are biological differences."
Oh my God!
It was very, very, very
I'm
funny.
going to do so much googling when I get home.
Anyway, that's it for this section. But coming up in the final part, we discuss inclusive songs, should mobile phones be banned in schools, and how to ace a job interview. Could be useful for Monday. See you in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Monday's Telegraph, and Chris Rock has joined the line of comedians mocking Harry and Meghan for crying about racism. Who's got this one? Is this?
I do. Chris Rock pokes fun at Duchess of Sussex royal family racism claims. We actually have a little clip that we can show you to waste 35 seconds of the show.
Back to the show, everybody trying to be a victim. Like, what's this girl, Meghan Markle? Seemed like a nice lady. Just complaining. I was like, didn't she hit the light skin lottery? Hit light skin lottery and still going on complaining. Acting all dumb like she don't know nothing. Going on Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family.
You know, I taught him everything he knows.
About what?
Well, he did my comedy course.
All right, I thought you were going to say guttering.
Yeah, so they're the original racists. They invaded colonialism. Look, I'm a massive, big fan of Chris Rock, one of my favourite comics. He really does need a little history lesson, maybe about the Roman Empire, or the Ottoman Empire, or the Caliphate, these various other colonialist empires that were there before the British.
Yeah. And in fact, the British Empire was the first one to outlaw slavery.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's very funny what Chris Rock did, going hard at the royal family, going hard at Meghan in particular.
Yeah.
Rock is one of the greatest comedians of his generation or any generation.
Oh, somebody wants a support slot.
Yeah, I'd love a support slot.
Well, I opened up for him in New York once.
Oh, really?
Did you?
Yeah, I did, yeah, but only in a comedy club, not like...
Right.
So you're on the bill with him. Got you, mate.
I went on before him.
Yeah. I opened for Chris Rock. Where was that? The open mic down the road from me, mate.
He also opened for me on the next night.
Anyway, I understand he's actually talking about that on American TV right now. Yeah. Anyway, the Telegraph now, and the Brownies are apparently going to stop singing to God in case it offends someone. Presumably, they're going to be singing to Satan or paedophilia or whatever else is a protected characteristic and glorified in this degenerate society. society, Francis?
Yeah. Well, the Brownies have stopped singing to God in new inclusive campfire songs. So the lyrics to some of the most beloved tunes remove references to religion as part of the drive to make the songs more inclusive to everyone. So here is a version. The original version of Brownie's Bells went like this: "O Lord, our God, thy children call, grant us peace and bless us all good night." Incredibly triggering and disgustingly racist, we can all agree on. The new version is like this: "Time for the end," bit bleak. "Our meeting's past. Brownie is great. Time flies so fast. Good night. I'm a brownie. You're a brownie. Brownies all around the world. Good night, brownies, everyone." That sounds a bit racist, if anything, mate.
All right, Francis, it's not X Factor. The passion you put into that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there we go.
Is that what you like in the shower? Singing in the shower?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I rap it.
Zippity-doo-dah.
I don't think it needed the added layer of bleakness that you brought to that, Francis. It sounds like some sort of communist mantra that you'd chant.
Yeah.
Join the brownies. Join the brownies. We are the brownies. Oi, oi, oi. We are the brownies.
That's if Millwall ran the brownies there. Anyway, the Mirror now, and scientists have made big telescopes to spy on aliens, Josh.
It's quite interesting. New powerful telescopes could help scientists detect alien life on other planets. And the way that they would do this is they would see how the light refracts through the atmosphere, in which case they can possibly tell what the atmosphere actually consists of. By comparing it to our own. And if they get enough of these samples, then they might be able to actually kind of go, oh, well, that one has the potential for life.
Because there's certain gases that are only created by life and then break down quickly. So if you detect these gases, you can show that there's life there.
Methane.
Yeah.
Sorry about that one, by the way.
Don't worry, it's going to break down quickly.
Yeah, you didn't do that when you went for Chris Rock, did you, mate? Anyway. So it's all very exciting, and plus we're going to get an alien invasion in the next couple of years, aren't we?
Oh, really? That sounds a bit racist.
Which side do you think they'll go with Brexit?
Yeah, they're going to be Brexit.
Don't you think Rishi's new rules will keep them out?
No, mate. I think that's when it comes to conspiracy theory bingo, we've got every other. Let's go with aliens.
Yeah, you and the far right and your alien
exactly.
conspiracy.
Yes.
All right, Sadiq Khan. Anyway, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Monday's front pages. The Daily Mail has boat migrants to get life ban. That's Rishi's plan to stop the small boats crossing. The Guardian says that plan is unworkable. Unlike The Guardian to pour cold water on Rishi's fire. The Telegraph has the lockdown files. There's new revelations as they reveal that Hancock rejected a plan to cut the length of isolation required. The Times has migrants on small boats to be barred from Britain. The Daily Star has the big threes. Apparently we've got 3 snowstorms on the way. It's going to get very cold. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests Josh Howie and Francis Foster. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. And if you're watching the 5 p.m. show, the 5 a.m. show, stay tuned for the breakfast show.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Aaron Armstrong with your latest headlines. The former Health Secretary wanted to, quote, frighten the pants off everyone to ensure public compliance with constantly changing COVID rules. The latest leaked WhatsApp messages in the Sunday Telegraph show Matt Hancock and his team discussing how to utilise fear and guilt to make people obey lockdown, including using a new strain of the virus to scare the public. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, has told us Mr Hancock's political career is over.
I think the key thing is that he accounts for himself in front of an inquiry. It comes back to this point, doesn't it? Why we need this inquiry to take place quickly. A lot of people lost their lives. There's a lot of people who think that the way in which lockdowns operated has had long-term implications on all kinds of fronts. Everybody wants an inquiry because everybody wants to be able to see the evidence, to be able to debate it properly and calmly, and it's why we need to get on with it.
Well, in a separate leaked conversation with Matt Hancock, the UK's top civil servant described Boris Johnson as a nationally distrusted figure. He feared he would be ignored by the public if the then Prime Minister introduced new lockdown rules. Simon Case was appointed Cabinet Secretary by Boris Johnson in September 2020. A spokesperson for Mr Johnson has declined to comment. Some rail passenger season tickets have gone up by hundreds of pounds today in the largest increase in train fares for more than a decade. Ticket prices across England and Wales are rising by an average 5.9%. That despite strikes and cancellations. The Rail Minister, Hugh Merriman, says the increase is below inflation. However, Labour has described it as savage. Next week's remaining ambulance strikes in England have been called off. The Unite union, which represents 3,000 workers, has entered pay talks with the government. Unite's joined Unison and GMB, which say there's been a huge shift in the government's position. The strikes were to take place tomorrow and Wednesday. 2 men arrested following the shooting of a police officer in Northern Ireland have been released. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot several times in Omagh last month, and he remains in a critical but stable condition in hospital. 6 other men who are arrested